Okay, we're going to make a half recipe of the Blitz puff pastry from the book. We've got 4 ounces of bread flour, 4 ounces of AP flour, and 4 grams of salt. I'm going to mix those together real well. Blitz puff pastry is made a great deal like we make our pie dough. However, we're going to use butter, not shortening. And I'm just using nice ice cold butter straight out of the refrigerator. In the book it says to cut it into about 1-inch pieces. I find that that's just a little bit too big. So I'm going to cut my 1-inch pieces in half, and then I'm going to throw them in the flour. I'm going to take that butter and I'm going to toss it in the flour, making sure that it is coated. Notice that I am working in a bowl big enough that I can get my hands into. I don't want to have a bowl that the sides of the bowl come straight up. I want to have a little bit of a flare in them. That way I'm not trying to work like this. I've got ample room to get my entire hand all the way through. Now I'm going to just kind of break the butter up just in half, breaking and tossing the entire time. Don't blend the butter in your hand with the flour. If you do, the dough will turn out mealy. It will also end up being what they call short. You won't have the flakes in it. It'll have more of an interior like a cookie. So just breaking and tossing. If your butter is too soft and you end up blending it, then I suggest you just stick your bowl into the refrigerator for a couple of minutes and allow the butter to firm up a little bit more. To this, I'm going to add 4 ounces of ice water. The reason why we want our water to be ice or ice cold is because we don't want that water to melt or soften our butter. Strain your ice cubes off, guys. Okay, so I have my 4 ounces all the world around. A pint is a pound, water, milk, and eggs. I'm going to hold just a little bit of my water back. I'm going to kind of toss my flour with the water. And once I've distributed the water all the way through the dough, I'm going to now start putting my hands on it and really manipulating the flour together with the butter. At this point, many people think, oh, it's not going to come together. You need to rely on the moisture from the butter for this to come together. So don't give up quite yet. I'm going to go on and add the rest of my water, and as opposed to adding it on top of the dough, I'm going to add it down here into the dry at the bottom of my bowl. Kind of toss that up, distribute that a little bit better. Once it's all come together, I'm going to take it and knead it on the table just a couple of times to pull it all together. Then I'm going to wrap it up and put it into my refrigerator for about 20 minutes. This will allow the gluten to relax. If you look, you can still see the chunks of butter. Those chunks is what is going to give you that flake in your dough. Okay, so now we're ready to go in the refrigerator. Okay, the Blitz puff pastry has been in the refrigerator for about 15-20 minutes. It's firm enough that I'm going to be able to roll it out. I'm going to roll it out on a little bit of bread flour. I like the bread flour a little bit better than I like the other flours because there's a little bit more proteins, which means it doesn't clump up and it scatters a little bit better. So I'm going to put a little bit of flour on the top and I'm going to start rolling it out. As I'm rolling it, I'm going to kind of form it into a rectangle. I'm going to roll this out to probably about 1/4 of an inch before I do my first turn on it. Before I start the turn or the fold on it, I'm going to brush off any excess flour. That way the dough adheres to itself. So I've got my brush that I specifically have for my dry ingredients. And I just simply want to brush off as much flour as I possibly can. And I'm going to do a 4-fold or a book fold, which means I'm going to bring this end about halfway, again dusting off any excess flour. I get a little crazy with the flour, so I kind of like to put my hand out to keep it from hitting my floor. That way I don't have to sweep up nearly as much off the floor. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. And then I'm just going to simply fold it right like this. Now I can roll this out twice before it needs to be refrigerated again. I find that after more than 2 times the dough starts developing some gluten and really has some snap in it. It snaps back like a little rubber band, so I find that 2 times is pretty much so the amount that you can roll it out before you need to refrigerate it. Not only that, if you go much longer than 2 times, the butter gets to the point that it's so soft that it starts melting itself into the dough. You still should be able to see the butter at this point. Again, about 1/4 of an inch. Stay. They don't train these rolling pins very well. So I want to get all the excess flour off again. This is something that a lot of people tend to forget to do. And then when the person who's eating the pastry goes to bite into it, sometimes the pastry will shift and fall apart. So again, it is a 4-fold. At this point, I like to get a lot of the flour off, because if I don't, then the moisture from the dough kind of absorbs into the flour. So I'm going to wrap this up again and put it back into my refrigerator for another 15 minutes. Okay, so now we're going to do the third 4-fold on our Blitz puff pastry. So again, I'm sprinkling the table with a little bit of bread flour and doing the same with the product. Going to roll it out to about 1/4 inch. Now that you can see it, okay, I'm going to dust off any excess flour once again. Stay. Got a little pocket of butter that is showing. No worries, we're going to cover it. At least we know there's still butter in there. And now it is ready for us to think seriously about that tartartan. I always want to put an R in the second part. There's no R. We're done.